Kia ora everyone, we are looking back, as we have been all week, over 2016. And one of the big losses for New Zealand this year was the death of former CTU President Helen Kelly, who passed away in October after a long, brave fight with cancer. The lifelong unionist and, of course, in recent years, medicinal cannabis crusader, was remembered for her long-running campaigns to improve workplace health and safety in sectors such as forestry and farming and mining. Tremendous improvements over the past few years. She would say, of course, there was still a way to go, but boy, a distance had been travelled. In August, I went to her home in Wellington, up Mount Vic, to talk to her about her life and what mattered in a place she had grown up in.
This is where I grew up and now live here, yeah. So I haven't strayed far from the next.
No, from, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful place. And
It's a beautiful place.
yeah.
So this was your mum and dad's home?
Yeah, and this suburb was a very working class suburb when we were kids. You know, the local school would have been a very low decile school.
What was it? Did you go to Clyde Key?
Yeah. So we had, rubbish collectors next door and wharfies up the road, and Dad was a truck driver, and the houses were cheap, yeah.
Were you always going to become the person you became, do you think? Were you always going to be...
Well, I was always going to be political and always be active in some way like that, because the whole family was political, active, and still is.
And brave too, right? I mean, there's all sorts of ways of being political, isn't there? I mean, sometimes you can be described as a political person because you can hunt with the hounds and run with the hares.
Yeah.
Your dad never did that, did he?
No. And so, he was a very, very hard-working trade unionist for the lowest paid cleaners and caretakers in New Zealand. And, it had incredible conditions because we had a proper, decent industrial relations system. So, cleaners and caretakers had a decent wage, permanent work, centrally funded from the government and schools and things. When you look at how all of that work has deteriorated, he would be heartbroken, to see what's now happening with caretakers and cleaners. 16 different employers each year contracting out to lower and lower prices. No permanent sort of caretakery type jobs anymore. When you think of the atmosphere that we organised in with him now, how workers are, it's quite distressing, really.
The casualisation of jobs and the farming out of contracts.
Yeah, and when someone gets a decent job now with a contract, everyone's amazed and celebrates. Oh my God, my kid's got a good job, they've got a proper contract, the employer seems to want to train them. It's like a miracle. I don't know if you've noticed that. Whereas,
yeah, I'm thinking about it, I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, they've got an apprenticeship, how did that happen, So things have really dramatically deteriorated, I think, for young workers.
Did your dad ever, because people said horrible things about your dad, did he ever sort of sit in the corner and feel sorry for himself and think, I can't go and do it again tomorrow?
They said wonderful things about him as well.
Yeah,
That's the contrast.
I'm going to come back to that.
Yeah, so he believed in what he was doing and knew that unions are essential public institutions, and without them, life is miserable. He was just, determined about that, and he was right, and he was never ashamed of the work he was doing. Yeah, so... And all learned on the job. He was a working class boy who didn't finish school and, could write a sentence which was about 5 paragraphs long without a full stop. Yeah, things like that.
Your eyes are sparkling. You're
Yeah.
proud of him, eh?
I am proud of him. We had a very good father and mother, and my mum's still alive. She's 90, yeah. But they loved us and they included us.
And what did they make you believe in?
In equality and humanity, really. I think that everybody is of the same value. I think it was the primary thing, that when you saw somebody being treated in a way that you felt was unfair, it was because they were not being treated as a human being or as a citizen or, as an equal. And that was the analysis that we were always taught.
So that you were taught that as a child, right?
Yeah, and we were taught about South Africa, we taught about Vietnam. Our parents were very active in Vietnam. So we learned it internationally as well as locally.
You became a teacher?
Yeah.
Briefly?
I did.
You studied law?
Yeah, I studied teaching first.
Yeah.
And because that's what people did, right? And
Is that what people did, or is that what, forgive me, girls or females or young women
girls,
did?
Yeah. And I wanted to be a teacher, and I loved teaching, although I only taught for a couple of years. But it's a fabulous job. I mean, it's the hardest job I'll ever do. It was harder than the CTU president's job. It was absolutely non-stop, unfinished, constant pressure to teach in a class of 7-year-olds, 37-year-olds, and keep them all busy. And you go home and you think, oh my God, if I don't teach them, they won't learn. They're only 7. What's going to happen to them? I mean, you go home and you think, I didn't even talk to that kid today. You always have this guilt and be working away and working in the weekends.
Was that about fairness?
I think it was. There was I thought, well, if they're going to spend half their life in your class for a whole year, you probably had an obligation to them to sort of move them forward and teach them. And that was a skill which you didn't really understand yourself when you were first year teaching. Yeah.
And when you became a union delegate, did that feel just right? Did that just fit?
No, it felt like typical. I'm a first year teacher and the school's going to lump me with this delegate's job. That was my first delegate's job. But I was pleased to do it because it was right in the middle of Tomorrow Schools. It was right in that transition and there was a lot of issues and I was very interested in them. In those days, everything was structured and everyone was in the union. You had these branch meetings and that's what you did. I mean, those meetings are much more few and far between now and they're about issues. So I think they're much more interesting. We've learned a lot about, having a topic that people, like teachers care about education, right? Yeah. Have an education union meeting about national standards or something. No, they absolutely can take it over and contribute, yeah. And so unions need to learn about how they engage workers and what the issues are that they're interested in. Yeah.
How do unions even get to workers now? I mean, how do, for example, if you're a cleaner with Spotless, and I'm not picking on Spotless for any reason, it's just the first name that came to mind, how the hell does the union get to them?
Well, this is part of the problem. We've got an industrial relations system that doesn't cover everybody, doesn't extend those international rights to all of those workers. So the forestry workers haven't got a shit show in hell. And farm workers of having collective agreements, even though they've got the same international rights as you and me, of having access to the union, of being able to join a union easily without threat. And that is a problem with the law. And the government has deliberately just cut it down and down and down and made it harder and harder and harder. But also when the law changed in the 90s, it excluded the most vulnerable workers from coverage and they've paid the price for it.
When you say the most vulnerable, who are you talking about explicitly?
Well, let's say, for example, forestry workers used to get 70% of the profit share and they're now down to 30% over this period of the last 20 years. We tell the story of Charles Finlay, killed in the middle of the night, $16 an hour after 27 years in the bush. Well, what was he meant to do to change that? There's no union, there was no collective. There was no opportunity for him to collectively bargain and his wages just went like this and that forced him to work longer and longer and longer and in the dark and the forestry contract was screwed down. It's this legacy story of lack of recognition of equality and the need for people to earn a living when they're working. I mean, the deal is you go to work, you earn a living, you have a decent life, isn't it? If that's not the deal, we need to talk about it. If the deal is that you get up at 4 a.m, drive into the woods in the middle of winter and then work in the dark until someone drops a log on you, then that's not a great deal, really.
You managed to achieve something remarkable in forestry because it was a terribly unsafe business, and that's not a crass shorthand, that's a statement of fact. People were dying at an alarming rate.
It was incredible, wasn't it? That year. And no one had even noticed, and it was, it was quite a weird way that I got into it because we hadn't noticed. And after Pipe, we started to say, well, what else is going on? And it became transparent that this was a really big problem area. And that, to give credit to the forest owners, they obviously knew they were getting close to the edge of what was acceptable anyway, but they have changed.
So what was the worst year?
2012.
How many people died in forestry?
10. And there's only 6,500 people on the payroll. So of the 6,500 on the payroll in 2012, over 1,000 of them were on ACC and had been on ACC for more than a year. So and only 12 prosecutions of 900 serious harm accidents. So we just got in there, took these private prosecutions, publicised the cases, gave a voice to the widows and the mothers and the people who had lost loved ones in the forest, and then we set up this inquiry. We won the inquiry.
So someone was dying every 5 weeks.
Yeah. And in terrible circumstances, not dying in normal, nothing's normal, but, just in absolutely overworked, exhausted, bad wet weather gear, wind blowing over a tree on top of them. It's endless.
And what's it fallen down to? What's the most recent year, do you know?
Well, we understand that the accident rate, we've had about two or three deaths this year, which we were disappointed in because we had this whole period, like 15 months really, with nobody.
No deaths. Yeah.
But it's about 70% reduced in serious harm accidents, which is sensational, right? Yeah, sensational. And I mean, but it's actually made those families angry because they now know that, you know, their people didn't have to get hurt either. There'd been this initiative. One of the families that we worked with, their dad was killed, and the two boys were working in the forest. 40 minutes to call in his death, even though he was still alive. It didn't ring in the inspector, didn't ring in the ambulance or the helicopter. You know, this all came out in the coroner's hearing. I mean,
40 minutes.
40 minutes was what they did in Pike, right? They left 40 minutes before they rang in the explosion. With this man when he was killed, Dave McMurtry, when he was killed, the employer didn't ring it in for 40 minutes.
And why was that, do you think?
Well, in the coroner's hearing, when that became an issue, it was suggested that they were arguing about whether it was a helicopter or an ambulance. That was not been proven, so, you know, we hope that wasn't the case. But regardless, it's irrelevant. The WorkSafe thought it was okay that they waited that time, which we were furious about. Even in the coroner's hearing, we've got them saying, yeah, you know, if they were treating him, but it's just unsatisfactory. And of course, it reinforces what happened at Pike.
You were shattered by Pike River, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, it was the biggest industrial accident you and me will ever see, and there's a lot of responsibility to share around for Pike.
The responsibility didn't settle anywhere. It just flew away.
It was just incredible, wasn't it? And there was a case to answer that. They found that. It's unbelievable that they didn't go ahead with that. And that's not the only thing, actually. What is the Crown's responsibility to these families? They still haven't faced these families and said, we let you down too, and what's our liability? And we're not giving up on them. We're going to keep on going. And what we've learned from Liverpool and what the families got inspired by from Liverpool was keep going, because if you go away, that's what they're waiting for. You know, just keep going, find new angles, keep pushing, and that's what we intend to do.
It's exhausting keeping going, isn't it? I was looking at Sonia Rockhouse and Anna Osborne the other day and thinking they must be so tired after 5.5 years.
It's more exhausting not keeping going, mate. You see, that's the problem. Letting it go is more exhausting. Letting it go is just unacceptable. They won't let it go, and so we've got to support them, because I don't blame them for that. I wouldn't let it go. It was so outrageous. And you know, what are we doing now? Building stuff with bad steel and carrying on? Nothing's learned either.
What would you change if you could, you know, if you were in the wand-waving business?
It's things like that, mate. It's standards. It's about the health and safety stuff on farms. You know, why not reform it and help them to be safe? Why just assume farming is dangerous and we'll exclude them and we'll put up with it? Why does New Zealand do that? These are the things that, you know, I think we need to push back on.
How are you spending your days?
Oh man, I'm flat out. In fact, I've got to try and not be so flat out, because, you know, I want to go and spend more time with my mother and all those sorts of things. But
we're not going to swing the camera around and look around the room, but your beautiful son, Dylan.
Yeah.
You must be proud of him.
Oh, he's adorable, isn't he?
He is. Having just met him.
Cheeky, but.
And your bro is here.
And my brother, yeah, and then I've got a mum, and I've got a lovely husband, so that's sort of, we're compact, but...
Except you're not compact. I mean, you are one of the most loved people. Isn't it funny that, you know, 5 years ago...
I know. The
bloody Helen Kelly, why doesn't she shut up?
I know.
Now people are saying, more Helen Kelly.
Yeah, well, they're saying that around the world with more left-wing politics is what they're calling it.
No, sorry, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you particularly, specifically. That's not big picture stuff. That's about you, isn't it?
I don't know, but I'm enjoying the work I'm doing, and I'm really determined to try and finish off a few things, you know.
What things?
Well, I'd like to get this forestry thing really robust, including having a community of advocates that can ring the next workplace death families, not just forestry, but give them advice. So we just had a person last night whose husband was killed in a trucking accident, completely in the dark about what they do. So, you know, these families are looking at setting up an organisation, and they'd provide them with the information about WorkSafe and who you can get in touch with, just to provide some support. I'd like to get that up and going so that legacy work of forestry keeps going and there's infrastructure. I'd like to sort out Pike, you know, really hope that decision comes through quickly and we can move forward on that. I don't know what, there's more work to do there, including considering whether we sue the Crown. You know, it's a possibility, we need to get onto that.
Is that a real possibility?
Yep.
It's hard to do, isn't it?
It's expensive. We'd have to get the community support, but we would get it if we have to, unless the Crown may bargain, but, you know, we can't just leave the Crown's questions unanswered. Maybe the Whittle case will give us an opportunity, I don't know. But, you know, we cannot leave Pike as it is. It's just not viable to say, oh well, move on. We haven't learned enough from it, we haven't changed enough, and we haven't recognised our responsibility enough in it. So I'd like to see some progress on that. And then in farming, we've got to sort out the working conditions of farm workers. You know, they're all being underpaid. When MB go out and inspect, their labour inspectors, 2/3 are not being paid properly, let alone being paid safely or being paid decently, not being paid properly on the minimum code. So those are the sort of the three areas I'm putting a lot of energy in, and then this Mr. Talley.
What would you say to Mr. Talley? And we have to be careful of the laws of defamation. What would you say to him?
I don't know, but I tell you what people say to me most is how, why?
What do you mean, how, why, why?
How is he like that? Why is he like that? I'm not going to explain his behaviour. I don't try and explain politicians' behaviour either. Each person behaves according to their own accountabilities and values, really.
What are your accountabilities and values?
Well, I feel very accountable to the people that pay union fees. You know, they go out at night and stack supermarket shelves, and they contribute a little bit of their income, that shitty little income they get, towards being collective and working with their mates and joining together and improving their lot. I really respect that. And that means that that money and that energy that they put in has to be reciprocated by us to make sure we're strong and we can deliver. So that's my sort of philosophy. That keeps me going. And I often say, what would the supermarket worker stacking shelves at night think of this activity? You know, would they, if they understood it and understood the politics of it, would they approve of it, or would they think we were pie in the sky? This is sort of a test that I run past me. So that's what sort of accountability is in my view. And then the values of the union movement are so strong about collectivism and about sticking together, and the role of workers, the contribution to the economy that we make, and the need to have that recognised, yeah.
Respect?
Yep, it's reciprocity, respect. They're all concepts that have to exist in the workplace. Both parties wanting each other to succeed, not just one way. You know, not seeing your labour as a cost, but as a contribution, as a valuable asset. And also as I say, egalitarian families who are here to earn a living, you know. And I really think there's this narrative in New Zealand that you're lucky to have a job, don't bite the hand that feeds you, be grateful. The job creator is the charity giver, and you're the charity taker, beneficiary versus benefactor, rather than a mutual relationship. And a lot of employers will say to you, oh, it's lucky to have a job, they can quit if they don't like it or whatever. You know, this sort of derogatory misunderstanding of the economic situation, yeah. So I think, you know, it was really interesting once when the minimum wage went up. A couple of McDonald's workers went on the tally and said that it wasn't enough, they couldn't survive. And TV3 ran the headline, 2 workers are prepared to bite the hand that feeds them. Because the narrative is that McDonald's are feeding them, not that they're working hard for McDonald's and being paid low wages and that it's a reciprocal arrangement, but that they're somehow being a charity, being fed. I often pick up those little subtleties and tweet them. I'm a big tweeter. Yeah.
What do you want New Zealand to look like? Like Dylan, who's behind us, your boy. What sort of New Zealand do you want his children to live in and their children to live in?
I'd like to see him in a you know, sort of a more accepting society of people as people, and where we encourage them. But instead we just slap them down, embarrass them, teach them never to stick their head up in the fishing village.
You stuck your head up in the fishing village, haven't you?
Yeah, I do think New Zealand is at risk of behaving like a fishing village. If you're a stranger or you've got a different idea, you're a bit controversial, they'll drive you out of town or be threatened by you or suspicious, you know. And that the fleet owners control all the decisions and the fishermen have to do what they're told. That's how I sort of see it, really. It's not good for us.
Helen Kelly, whose loss was felt by many people throughout the country, but perhaps particularly by the families of the Pike River mine victims, who praised her long-term support and commitment to them and to workers' rights and worker safety. Over the past few weeks, the Pike River families have held protests over the permanent sealing of the mine, and last week they went to Parliament in a bid to garner support from new Prime Minister Bill English. That's a work in progress. One of those who travelled to Wellington was Dean Dunbar. Dean's son Joseph was the youngest Pike worker. At 17, he wasn't really officially meant to start work at the mine until the following Monday, but he was so excited he went in on the day of that terrible explosion. I spoke to Dean whilst he picketed with a group of around 60 others on Logburn Road at the gate they could get to that was closest to the mine. He told me he would take flowers to the mine every year on his son's birthday, but this year permission was refused.
Well, I'm going to get up to that portal one way or another today, and I guess if the New Zealand police are going to arrest the father of Joseph Dunbar for going to take flowers to his grave, then I'll stand in a court law and I'll take that. I'll take that hit, John. If that's what's coming, and this is the way that this country is headed, that we're secretly entombing children in the middle of nowhere and denying access for fathers to be with their children, then okay, that's going to send a message to the country, and it'll be loud and clear, I'm sure.
That was about 6:45 this morning. The first people began arriving at the barrier arm that keeps the mine and the outside worlds apart about an hour earlier. Tommy Daly, Milton Osborne's mate, whose friendship endures with a loving singularity.
Yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got 6 people at the moment, and it's only, 6 o'clock, isn't it? That's a good start.
And what's the morning like?
Beautiful West Coast day today.
That was at 6. By 7 the numbers had swollen to 40 or 50. And among those who'd driven inland was Dame Fiona Kidman and her husband Ian, who was sitting at home in Wellington the other night and had one of those moments.
I just looked at the picket line and I thought, this is a lonely group, not enough people here. I mean, these people have been coming here for 6 years and talking for 6 years, and I said to Ian, I think we should be down there.
People often say that, of course, but this week it felt really important.
So we've come.
Pike's not an easy place to get to, 40 minutes inland from Greymouth. You cross the big bridge, then turn east away from the sea, past the turn-off to Blackball, with the history it forged so hard, and up beyond where almost any people are.
We've just driven through this beautiful bush, through the rivers. The dawn was coming up, and now the mountains in front of me with the mist over it, and all this group of people are here for yet another morning, and it's something that touches you really down in your heart. We're both pretty emotional right now.
It's beautiful there, and also because of what happened, it's not. Dean Dunbar hates it now. There's a word he keeps using for it.
Oh, it's a nasty place, John. I don't think it will ever be anything but a nasty place.
The police arrive, and then a few minutes later the Solid Energy workers. Then a car from Geotech, a local contractor. And on the West Coast you don't cross a picket line if you're a local. Tommy was there.
I mean, everybody was just shaking their heads until they seen the Geotech wagon, and everybody was disgusted. And they just smiled as they went past.
In the background, as we spoke, Bernie Monk was addressing everyone, as he's done so very many times.
And he's just made the announcement that nobody will be going into the mine. Would you like me to put you on to Bernie?
I'd love it. Is that all right? Okay. Thanks, Tommy.
Bernie, got a minute?
Bernie does have a minute. He's had 6 years of minutes, never giving up. It's 8 a.m. now, and a small breakthrough has occurred. Dean's been allowed in.
Yeah, Dean and his wife have gone up to place a wreath on behalf of his family and us. We were only allowed 2 people to go up. We asked if we could all go up, but we were refused.
Bernie's son is in the mine, Michael. He was 23, a builder, a rep rugby player in the Heartland Championship for the West Coast, and he was saving his money from Pike to go on his OE with his girlfriend, Gemma. They can't even go in to visit him now. They're not sure why. If it's safety, that's confusing, because for years they could go in. And if it's become so risky you can't even approach it now, how can there be workers up there all the time? But words from men in suits have stopped meaning much now. In September 2011, this is what the Prime Minister told the families during a private meeting.
First thing is, I'm here to give you absolute reassurance we're committed to getting the boys out. And nothing's ever changed on that. So when people try and tell you we're not, they're playing, I hate to say it, but they're playing with your emotions.
That wasn't the emotive flush of those early uncertain days, but 10 months after the explosions. And if anyone at that meeting doubted the strength of the PM's commitment, he made it personal.
So you are the number one group that want to get those men out, and quite frankly, I'm number two, because I want to get them out.
5 and a bit years later, the families do understand that may not happen, but they want to at least try, even if only in the drift, the entrance to the mine. And that's what they were asking for in that meeting with Solid Energy on Wednesday. Put the sealing on hold.
And sit down with the family's experts for one day, you know, and they just weren't even interested in that. Couldn't believe it.
The morning passes, as 6 years of mornings have, and then Dean Dunbar is back from taking his flowers up.
Ian Judd from Solid Energy stood beside us the whole time we were up there.
Supervised as he visited his son. And what was it like to be back there?
I cried, John. And, it's my time to talk to Joseph. I go right up to the gates inside the portal, and we just talk, and I tell him I'm sorry, and that I'm doing my best, and I'm failing at this stage, but John, you never know what a day can bring. It's a nasty, horrible place of absolute sadness, John, and that's all it is to me. I don't know whether it will always be like that. I hope not, but I get the feeling it will always be like that.
Dean Dunbar, whose 17-year-old boy is in that mountain with the other 28 off limits, locked away, and soon under concrete seal. He wants to get over it, but he can't.
It's just, John, I just miss him, mate, and I want to bring him home. I know he's gone. I know he's never coming back. But I want to bury my boy, John. I want to put him next to his granddad, Paul. And I want to be able to visit him every day in a nice place with nice surroundings, my way.
And that is it from us as we look back over the year. On behalf of my really tremendous colleagues who do such brilliant work to bring you Checkpoint every night, and of course Rowan, who is co-presenting with me this week. Have a great night. We'll be back again tomorrow.